Hello, everyone. We have blah blah. I'm tired. Okay, let's just keep going. All right. Hello, everyone. A lot of time we hear things in the media and we form our own personal opinions, and sometimes those opinions may not be truly accurate. So today I have a guest, and I've been really dying to talk to him. He's wearing a nice MAGA hat. Welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to live in the 51st state of Canada.
51st state, yes. Can you please introduce yourself? Maybe share where you're from, something so that we get to know you before we dive into today's amazing chat.
I've lived in Vancouver, Canada, on the west coast of Canada for my entire life. However, my father and my grandfather they escaped from communist China, and so I've heard the stories, and I have a little bit of a perspective of how trustworthy or non-trustworthy they might be.
All right. You want to share a little more communist China? So, can you give us the link? So, someone was from China in your family?
Yeah, my father's full Chinese in his ethnicity, although he was born. He grew up in Hong Kong, and so which at that time was two independent countries from one another. Very interesting story, Hong Kong, because I went there. I don't know how much time we have, but yeah, well, it kind of blows apart that whole idea of how horrible colonialism supposedly is, because you could see how the people on the one side of the border who had been colonized by Britain were completely free and prosperous. They had the third largest financial center in the world, headquartered in their city, were involved in the international community in a positive way. And on the other side of the border, people under communism were in complete oppression, could not talk about the things they wanted to talk about, could not hear the truth or find out the truth on many different things. So that was an experience.
Thank you for sharing. You ask about how much time we have. I think that will not be quite enough if we dive into that topic, because from where I'm coming from, uh, being a Rwandan and in Africa, so the colonial, my grandfather lived it. I was gonna say my father, I'm like, no, that would be wrong, because he was born in 1951. Independence was in 1960, so maybe he was still young. Okay. But that being said, yeah, that could be a long topic. What I would like to talk is when I first met you, and when I first saw you, actually, because you were wearing the MAGA hat, and I wasn't sure, like, all right, can I even say hi to him? Because you look at the media, you hear the hat. For me, as a black person, it's like an instant, I should say, nervousness in that sense. Like, okay, this is a MAGA person. But yeah, then I came, I said hello. That was before the elections, and I guess we are still talking. So, um, do you remember at that first encounter we had? Do you want to talk about the first impression? Obviously, when we are at the library, we are working, and here comes this guy and to talk to you. Did you have any first impression when I came to talk to you?
Charles, I gotta say, lots of people talked to me about my hat, and I don't remember that conversation, but I will say one thing. Yes. I think it looks better on you.
This guy. Okay, all right. Thank you. But I want to stay close to the audience. Focus on the interview. Yeah, thank you. We'll do that again. You are Canadian. Um, I want to ask, because we don't have Republicans here. I think we have the conservative, right? So, where do you see yourself? More of a Republican or a conservative?
Wow, that's a great question. We probably don't have time for that question either. If you want to know who I am, then the answer would be I see myself as a Christian conservative in my values. That does not mean I'm aligned with the Conservative Party of Canada. I'm more aligned with the Republican Party of the United States of America, but that doesn't mean that I'm more aligned with the Republican Party of Iran either. Like it's not necessarily a binary issue. But the reasons that I'm involved in this is pro-life, protecting the babies who are in their mother's wombs, and different things like that. So,
And also, when we were having this conversation, you also mentioned about human rights, because you are saying pro-life. So just draw us a picture. What does it mean to be, you said, Christian conservative? Should I say Republican? Just draw us a picture for someone like me, who just saw you on the street. Everything I've heard, it's like, hey, first of all, we tend to hear Republicans per se. I mean, even Trump, they say, it's pro-white. Let's just say that, and so for us, it will be more like, okay, am I even feel welcome? But so it's like a two-part questions. But so just take your time, educate me, educate us. So Christian conservative or Republican, what does it mean? You're mentioning pro-life. You said something about the human rights. Just touch on that.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, okay, for sure. I'll tell you a story, and I hope this illustrates to a certain degree. So, I was told about a job opening with a crown corporation. So that would be a company that was set up by the Canadian government and funded fully by the Canadian government. And I was told that this was a really high paying job as an infrastructure job. So in construction, you can get little commercial projects, but if you get an industrial project, which infrastructure projects are mostly industrial projects, building bridges, building underground tunnels and different things like that, these are the high paying jobs. But then they said, well, actually, we're only looking for minorities. And so unless you like, so maybe you can just say that you consider yourself an ethnic minority, or that you consider yourself actually the word they used was visible minority, which I'm not. Most people don't realize that I have Asian blood, so I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that, right? That you could say that you could become homosexual. That was one of the offers they gave me. Not interested in that. It was the only one that really I had any control over. The other one was if I had been a woman, they would have hired me. Different things like that. And so I was rejected from this job. Now they didn't have a full. They didn't. When I say that was all they were hiring, I think they had about a two to one ratio, that they had to hire two minorities to every white straight male that there was. But there's supposed to be protected characteristics that exist in society, and ethnicity or sexual preference or gender are supposed to be protected characteristics that people are not allowed to be discriminated by. However, every time you make money, the government takes money out of your paycheck to go into programs like this that are blatantly racist and so forth. And I mean, that project failed miserably for many reasons. The whole thing just had problems, and it's not the kind of place I want to work, anyways. And that was the decision I made. But I don't, for me, I'm not going to vote for my money to be used that way. So does that address your question a little bit?
It sort of does, but it went a bit deeper. I think you are referring to those programs, like, I guess, what I'm sort of understanding, like the DEI programs,
It's definitely in that. It's definitely in that category. Yeah.
where they are sort of tagged for a certain group or certain gender, and you don't see yourself fitting in any of those. Is that what I'm understanding?
They did not say it in those same words, but what they said without saying it is that because I was a straight white male, I was not going to be getting that job.
I see. And I think those are like the DI programs that Trump is trying to end or has already ended in US, formerly affirmative action. It's very interesting because I had a conversation with a good friend of mine and who is black, and he was saying that um, those programs that were more pronounced after 2020, that's when we saw it because of that unfortunate passing of George Floyd. And then, so in his organization that I'm not going to name, they started saying, okay, we need to have these specific programs for our black staff. But he did not want to embrace it because he felt that if they have to promote him, it should be based on his merit.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, do you want the handout or do you want to rise up to the occasion? I mean, there's black kids in schools and there are teachers that are being told, well, you have to pass him even if he can't read or write. Instead of holding them to a higher standard, they're being told to give these kids a lower standard. Which one do you want?
So now, my question initially, yes, this is a very good topic too to discuss, but it was okay. It was, imagine I just landed in Canada like I did 27 years ago, and the media is saying stay away from the MAGA people. And some people may even hear that because they don't like black people, this and that. But you say, hey, I am proud Republican. I am a conservative Christian. So if I just met you on the street like I did in 3 words, why should I be listening to that side? Why should I say that what you believe in is not a threat to the non-white people? Let me allow it to be blunt. And I know you said your father is from sort of in Asia, which is actually an interesting one as well aspect. But I just want to just let's just be blunt. Like in 3 words, tell us what does it mean to be pro-conservative?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it'd be so easy to just say that I'm pretty sure that Martin Luther King's, vision, his dream for America would have been a Republican and conservative one, where he said to live up to the standards that were in the Constitution. He didn't say, let's destroy all of our forefathers and the founders and things like that. But you talk about an interesting thing because you're talking about essentially what you just described to me is that you've been told by the media to discriminate against a certain class of people. Because now I don't have choice. I do have choice of what I put on my head, and you don't have choice of your skin color. So it's a very different conversation. But in a way, you could almost say we're in this. It's funny. I think a lot of they say when Donald Trump was shot and when Donald Trump went to jail, that's when all the black guys were like, "Oh, we like this guy. We can understand him." You know what I mean? Or he didn't go to jail or whatever. He got his mugshot, right? And I'm not meaning that to say that, but what I'm saying is that why should discrimination against Republicans be okay, and you know, seeing that discrimination against black people is not.
So let me just rephrase that. Well, the media will always take a certain stand, and that's why we have to think for ourselves. For those who are in the US, the public thoughts, the public opinion, in the voice of Candace Owen that I follow, she likes to say like she's a very staunch black conservative, and she has a lot of critics, and she likes to say, well, because I'm black American, it does not mean I always have to be a Democrat. And she has received a lot of backlash because, well, it's like if you are not a Democrat and if you are a Republican and you're black, there's something wrong. And so she always speaks on that. And question mark, question mark. But back to you. When, because obviously you seem young, maybe young. I am in my 40s. I don't know how young you are, but you seem young. So when did you embrace this? When did you become a Republican? If like, when did you feel, okay, this is for me? Do you remember that time, or was it something from your family, or was it just something that, okay?
Thank you for that question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before, and it's so it'll be interesting to for me to recollect it. You know, I became a Republican and a conservative because I became a Christian. So I've been a Christian. I became a Christian 10 years ago, and I guess I've been a conservative about 7 years now. Although it's still a learning process. When you talk about Candace Owens and things like this, these are conversations that there was essentially a type of media blackout of Canadians actually hearing that side of the conversation that she would present and things like that until really the internet came along, but even until certain parts of social media and things like that, and just really the not watching of television or radio, because if you have television or radio in Canada, it's almost always going to be left-leaning bias, very highly state-sponsored, and so American principles, patriotic American principles, those that were held by the founding fathers of America, is something that I'm starting to just scratch the surface of. I feel like there's so many people that know more about it, but it's just so fascinating. They believe that people can govern themselves. They believe that the people should run the country, not the other way around. And it's an interesting thing because we have, but not the it was Ronald Reagan who said that the Constitution of the United States of America is the only constitution of any country where the people tell the government what they are and aren't allowed to do. Every other constitution is the government telling the people what they are and aren't allowed to do. And it was just the American Revolution is just an amazing thing that happened. And even did you go to school in Canada?
High school. I did my high school here, yes, and the high school university.
Even in school, they don't teach us the significance of the American Revolution, and so it's been an eye-opening experience, to say the least, to be able to absorb that content. And I'm talking about, read the Declaration of Independence, read the Constitution. They're very short. Read them and try to absorb what they're saying. And it's just a fascinating thing. Just those things, actually hearing from the founding fathers themselves what they had to say about why they were doing this.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you are touching about the history, because I was thinking about history, the foundation of Canada, when I was reflecting on Canada being the 51st state, because people have to understand how Canadian came to be. Dominion of Canada, how the provinces, how the people came in and then decided, okay, we are going to unite. We're going to bring all this in the Dominion of Canada. And so Canada's 51st states. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, to segue into from what you're saying, there was the Americans, founding fathers. They said we don't want the king. All men are created equal. Those two concepts are incompatible. The idea that there should be a king and the idea that all men are created equal. You can only have one of those. So when they said all men are created equal, among human rights and equal rights for everybody, they were also talking about getting rid of the monarchy system. Nothing at this day and age, nothing wrong with the king himself, but the system is highly broken. And what you have to understand is there was a war, and after that war, the 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 American founding fathers didn't declare war; they declared independence. The British declared war because they declared independence. But after that war was finished, a lot of those Britons actually fled to Canada. Now in Vancouver, it's not as common, but a lot of the heritage of the people of Canada are people who are at one point enemies of the Americans. So you're right. We do have to understand that to a degree. Um, now the American founding fathers, they always had a big tent mentality. They wrote in their writings that they want Canada to become a state in the 1700s. They talked about this. Thomas Jefferson talked about this, and he said the American Constitution is the best constitution written for extensive empire and self-government. Now, empire is essentially what America will get out of it, and there's a lot of bad connotation to empire, but we are not talking about an empire that is under an emperor. We are talking about a constitutional empire where there's still a limit on the power of the executive, and they still are answerable to the people. So, a constitutional empire. But the part that the Canadians get is they get self-governance, right? One of the big things Donald Trump's doing right now is removing regulations, all these rules and rules and rules upon rules upon rules and rules of all these different things in the construction trade. Here's how high a light switch has to be off the ground, and here's how you have to do this, here's how you have to do that, and everything is just this uniform thing instead of just letting people, and it's very expensive to conform to these regulations, especially environmental regulations. And of course, we need some of those, but they are very, 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 very costly. And that's another one of the parts that project failed too, because they ended up buying all their steel from China because Canadian steel was too expensive because of the carbon tax. Now think about that. These environmentalists came in and they said the best way to protect the environment will be to tax Canadian oil and gas and coal and things like that. And because they did that, we're now buying steel from the most highly polluting country in the world, China. Canadians, steel is expensive or very hard to ship. You're now shipping it over the seas. You're polluting so much more through this system that was designed to stop pollution, that we really need to sit back. Look, if the environmentalists want to talk and be a part of the trade negotiations with China and to put limits on them as far as what they are allowed to emit and different things like that, then they should do that. They should join this conversation. But it's not going to come from attacking the Canadian people and attacking productivity. Donald Trump's doing a lot of different things right now. I mean, he wants to basically, and I think a lot of young people might not understand this, but as soon as you start making money of your own, you realize that the government's got their hand in your pocket. Like, if I wanted to hire you to come and work for me, or you wanted to hire me to come and work for you, and you were to offer me $100,000 a year, I would only get 70,000 of that, and that's
Yeah, the taxation, yes. And so you touched on a lot of good points, but you'll be surprised. Some people in Canada, because I actually saw an interview a while ago, that don't know that the head of state of Canada is now King Charles. I guess that's what you were referring to when we were talking about the monarchy. And I guess Canada was to be the 51st state, we will have a president, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. As far as the reasons in favor, um, America just has a better system. It's interesting to see, as an example, you talk about the media, right? They always want to say, we're for democracy, we're for democracy, we're for democracy. But when push comes to shove, they're willing to take Joe Biden out and put Kamala Harris in without any primary election, right? They're willing to, anyone who's pro-democracy, just like anyone who's pro-environment, anyone who's pro-democracy should be in favor of our cause. And the reason is because Canadians don't get to elect their own prime minister, and those Canadians don't get to elect their own Senate. All we get to elect out of the three branches of office is the House of Commons, the Commoners' House. They in turn elect the prime minister, who in turn elects the Senate. The entire Senate is just appointed minions of the prime minister. It's a very imbalanced system. And furthermore, the American system says that you will have one branch of government that's running things like the military, or the borders, and another branch of government that's writing laws and passing budgets. In Canada, the prime minister is both a legislator and an executive, and also a you would not see a senator, for example, ever diplomating with with foreign nations, for example, in the same way that you do in Canada, because it can pollute. And unfortunately, a lot of these countries that do that, they're big on the global enterprises. And when it comes to globalism, and you talk about, President Trump just pulled out of the World Health Organization. That's something that we should do too. Um, but when you talk about like the ways that the World Health Organization is trying to take away people's freedoms to be able to go where they want, to be able to choose what types of things go into their body, to be able to choose, when there's a pandemic or when there's not, they're trying to take all that away. And if they do, you gotta understand that the 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 best counter to these organizations that are trying to take over the world is a strong United States.
Absolutely, yes. I can relate with some things you just mentioned. One key one is that our current, well, the representative of a head of state, our governor general, is also appointed by the prime minister. It's a very interesting system because if you think about the hierarchy, is you have, well, they don't really have any powers per se, but they're still the governor general appointed by the prime minister. And I truly wish that we can also have a direct say on voting our head of states, not going through the MP. Now, this can be a really, really long conversation. I'm really enjoying it. What I would like for you to tell the audience, anyone watching, is, especially the young people, is why do you think Canada as a 51st state is a good idea?
Am I talking to Canadian young people or am I talking to American young people?
You are talking to Canadians because actually the poll shows that most Canadians, I don't know how, if this polls represent their opinion, but I was reading a poll that says that over 90% of Canadians are not for the idea. That's a big number. US, it says that they think Canadians should decide for themselves. So it will be mostly young Canadians because those are the numbers, the young Canadians. So I don't know the last numbers, but just Canadians in general. Who do you think this are? All right, so tell the Canadians why, Canadian young people, why it's a great idea that Canada should join the United States as 51st.
As a Canadian young person, you have to understand a few things. I'm not trying to talk down to you, but the older generation has constantly voted in favor for and have advocated for taxing you. Every time they pass a bill that says we're going to borrow more money, you are the one who has to pay for it. They're basically saying we're not going to pay for it just yet. We're going to pass it on to the next generation to pay for it. Every time they want to try to push housing prices up, you are the one who has to pay for it. They do that in many different ways, but that's something that they've always been interested in. And are you benefiting from this? Are you benefiting from there not being? Let me see. So I know when I was a young person, it would have taken a lot to convince me. But I think the young people today are a bit smarter.
Absolutely, and you've done such a great job. And we can always come back to it if there's any questions. Well, I would like to thank you for taking time and talking to me. I'm sure we're gonna have another conversation. Any last thought? Anything you'd like to add to conclude on?
Ever since World War II, the end of World War II, America has been the number one superpower in the world. During the Cold War, the USSR challenged America's superpowerdom in terms of military, and there was a lot of scared people about what could happen as far as nuclear annihilation of everyone. This is the first time that there's been an entity since World War II that's challenged America in terms of their economic superpowerdom. This is something we have to contend with and that we have to deal with, because that entity does not have your best interests at heart. They want to enslave you just like they've done the Chinese people. We should be helping to, yes, free the Chinese people, but also to push back against that agenda, and helping President Donald Trump and the United States of America is my intention of doing that, and to get the gospel of Jesus Christ out to those who have never been able to have a chance to even hear it. That's my agenda. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.